All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, adios.
Conversations from the Dark Side.
Good evening, everyone. It's a cold, snowy, black January night here in the mountains of West Virginia. The perfect backdrop for conversations from the dark side. My name is Amigo Aaron. I'll be your MC for this evening. Later on tonight, we'll be joined by the one and only Jack Flack himself, Rob Flack O'Hara, as we discuss with you UFO encounters. Encounters with aliens, with flying saucers. Have you seen them? Do you believe in them? Do you believe people that say they have? We will delve into these topics and listen to some listener feedback and take questions and comments from you in the chat. We are very interested in what you have to say. Feel free to call our toll-free, most places toll-free anyway, Conversation from the Dark Side hotline, which is available 24/7 for you to leave messages on. You can also join us here on Discord if you'd like to come in and talk with us. We'd be more than happy to accommodate you. And you can also email us your stories or your pictures, anything you want, to thedarkside@email.com. We're going to take a quick break to get everything lined up, and we will come right back and get deep into it. Hold on, everybody.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
I thought it might be fun to start the show off with a few items that I have picked up. You know, we've got a pretty immense library here at the house, and I thought it would be fun to go on a trip down memory lane in terms of what books were around to get the whole alien sort of phenomenon happening. And I just grabbed the first bunch of books I saw. I'm going to throw a few on the screen here. This is from a series of books here that were in public libraries for children. And you can see some of the titles here. Bigfoot, Monster at Loch Ness, The Abominable Snowman, Magic Boards. That's an interesting one. Reincarnation. But the three here that I think are fitting for the show, we've got, of course, a lot of UFO encounters happened at the Bermuda Triangle. Got to have that one. Then, of course, this one came into vogue. And by the way, these are from like 77. You've got The Case for Ancient Astronauts. Very good. And then, of course, the big one here, just straight up unidentified flying objects. These are the very books that I grew up looking at when I was a kid, checking these out and experienced them as a child. You know, my dad also had me watching In Search Of quite a bit back in the day. And that was another fun one I used to like, with Leonard Nimoy hosting, which ran for many years and really spiced up my interest in the unknown, the occult, and UFOs. Now, as you get older, and some of these may or may not, there have been thousands of books written. These are just a few I grabbed. This is a Walter Sullivan book here, We Are Not Alone. You may recognize that one. Here's another interesting one. This is Clifford Wilson, The Chariots Still Crash, if that one rings a bell for you. And then, of course, this is the same. Of course, you may think that the Chariots are an actual play on another book, which was called Chariots of the Gods. This is the sort of along the same lines, Not of This World, from the publisher of Chariots of the Gods, like he had anything to do with it. I like these books. They just come out and tell you what they're going to show you. This is an old classic. It's the UFO case book. It just says UFO on it, big orange letters. You've also got the books that try to put some sort of spin on UFOs involved in time travel and how they affected ancient people. This is one such book, UFOs, Past, Present, and Future. And then this is a personal favorite of mine, because you got to get that crossover going. And what you've got here, and I think you can figure this out from Warren Smith, it's UFO Trek. You can be the person that figures out what that's all about. The old UFO Trek. So these are the sorts of books I read when I was a kid to get myself interested in the whole UFO thing. Now, I have seen what I think was UFO. I'll go ahead and talk about it now. Just get out of the way. This would have happened when I was probably around 12, playing in my backyard at my mom's house. I saw what I thought was a UFO dodging around in the sky. It was just a black ball that zipped around in an odd way. You know, you look back at those sort of things and you wonder, you know, being so immature at the time, not like now, you wonder if what you saw was just something you couldn't comprehend, or if you actually saw a flying saucer. I'd like to kind of think that it was a flying saucer, but you never know what you're going to see when you get up there. I've also got some interesting listener feedback here that came in this week that I want to talk about. Let's go ahead and hop over to that and see what we've got going on here. So we got a few actual voicemail. We got a couple of these that came in. I thought we'd play one here from our good buddy Eric Nelson. Eric is a co-host over at Pixel Gaiden podcast, which is on our network. A great show. Eric, Cody, and Tim Drew. Please check them out. He sent this in. I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. So let's check out this clip from Eric.
Hello, this is Eric Nelson from the infamous Pixel Gaiden podcast with a UFO encounter of my own, and it happened just last summer. While most encounters I hear about happen in evenings or night, this one happened in the brightest part of the day and lasted all of about 4 minutes or so. It happened last summer here in California at around 1 p.m. It was a hot and bright day outside, about 90 degrees or so, and I was out for a run. About 2 miles in, I noticed something pretty bright up in the sky. It was 6 oval discs in a V-shaped formation. Once I stopped running and looked up, I could see it was moving at a pretty good pace across the sky. They were small and looked far away. I took my sunglasses off to get a better view, and they disappeared. When I put the sunglasses back on, they were there again. These are sports sunglasses and polarized, and maybe that has something to do with it. I have no idea, but I spent about a minute taking them off and on and seeing these discs. It seemed I could only see them when wearing these polarized sunglasses. Anyhow, I watched them for a couple more minutes move across the sky until they were right above me, and then they appeared to get larger and closer. Not really enough to where I could see any detail on the discs, but they're definitely larger. Finally, they started moving much faster and darted off. I started running back home and ran across a couple pushing a baby in a stroller in a park, and they were looking up at the sky. I asked if they had seen the discs in the sky, and the man said he had, but his wife couldn't see them. I noticed he had sunglasses on and she didn't, so I told them my story about only being able to see them with my glasses on, and then I went home. It was a really strange experience. I still think about it a lot today about what it could have been. I have no idea, but it was kind of unsettling. Anyway, thanks for listening to my story. I appreciate it. I will talk to you soon.
Very interesting. You know, when you see a group of unknown ships, that really gets your attention. You know, you see a lot. If anyone is familiar with I believe it was the Phoenix tapes, and there were also some sightings over California where there were thousands of people that saw these various ships. It's always adds credence to these stories that you've got multiple ships to check out. The truth of the matter is, when you've got all those people, it's hard to talk these down. So then it goes away from you're all nuts, and it becomes more like you're all not nuts, but what did you see? You know, no one's sure. And so then you go into the realm of flocks of birds, secret government ships, that sort of thing. So really, you never know what you're going to get when you get that many people in. Let me take a quick break. We'll come right back. Hang loose, everybody.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
All right, we are back, and yes, here, not in studio, but via mysterious communications, it's our good pal, Rob Flack O'Hare. How you doing tonight, Rob?
I'm doing good, man. I had everything set out to be here right on time. You're not going to believe this. I got abducted.
I thought you were going to say you had missing time, but I'll accept abducted too. Either way, I thought you were going to pull a Barney and Betty Hill on me.
Well, normally when they have missing time, it's hours and hours, but for me, it was about 7 minutes.
Yeah, I understand.
Mine could have been caused by UFOs or one too many Bud Lights.
Yeah, that'll do it. So, as you know, tonight we're talking about UFO encounters. And I wanted to, before you get too hot and heavy into stuff with me, I want to talk about your show. I remembered this week that you had done a show way back on You Don't Know Flack about UFOs. And it was a great show. Everyone should check out that show. And the good thing is the entire back catalog's there to listen to. And you had a heck of a story. And I think you may have briefly talked about it after one of the shows. But you had mentioned the story about you being a child and seeing a UFO. I was hoping you'd get into that one.
Yeah. Was this the lights in the sky?
That's the one.
Story. Yeah. So this happened to me when I was a young child. I was probably, gosh, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in there. It would have been definitely after Close Encounters of a Third Kind and Star Wars, which were both big influences on my childhood. I was always watching the skies. I don't know, as a kid, I always just dreamed of seeing, that UFO. Like, we watched all those shows. I'm sure we'll talk about that stuff, but that was the dream, right? And so in my neighborhood, I lived in a neighborhood where there were no through streets. There were no through traffic. It was just a big circle, and the whole thing was a dead end. So we got a lot of freedom as kids. We just got to run around, go outside, and sometimes you came home when it got dark, when the street light turned on. Sometimes you just got to run around in the dark. And, on the weekends, you'd come home. You'd tell your mom you'd be home by 10 o'clock or whatever. And so we used to play, all these games. And there was a field next to my house, and then the next door neighbors across the street had a big field. And we would go out there and we would play Ghost in the Graveyard. That was a big one for us, which is kind of, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like, it's like hide and seek, except for it's kind of the reverse. To play Ghost in the Graveyard, if there are 10 kids or something like that, only one kid goes and hides, and the other 9 kids, after counting, go try to find them. And then when they do find them, he tries to tag as many people as possible before they can go back to whatever you've designated as the base. And then the next round, everybody that he was able to touch become the ghosts. And so you keep playing until, everybody has been turned into ghosts. But that's a great game to play, out in the middle of a field when it's dark outside and kids just running around in the darkness. And so I remember I was out in the field out there one time, and we were, I say a field, it's a half-acre lot. It's not like we're out in the middle of nowhere. And I saw this thing up in the sky. I don't remember if I was hiding. I was probably hiding and just, staring and waiting for somebody to come find me. And I saw these lights, and, I know what an airplane looks like. And I know what a planet looks like, what a star looks like, but this was definitely something different. It had flashing lights, and it looked like they were moving, like they were rotating. It looked like it was round or something, and it was slowly coming towards us. And I remember just being overtaken with this thought that this is it. This is a UFO. This is something that I had not seen before. It wasn't moving like a plane. It wasn't sitting there like a star. It was something I had never seen. and I think I came out of my hiding spot at the time, and I remember there was this one bigger kid. He started teasing me. He was like, "Oh, Robbie thinks it's Star Wars. The people have come to take him away." You know, give me a hard time. But I just remember, I've always had this theory that if I ever saw a UFO, I wouldn't run away from it. I would run towards it. Like, I gotta know. I gotta know what is the secret? What is this mystery? What is the thing that people don't know? I want to know about it. And if that means I get zapped to another planet or something, so be it, you know. But I remember walking out into this field, and I mean, I don't think I was like, "Take me now," you know, anything like that. But I literally was just out there, and this thing got closer and closer. And when it eventually got right overhead, we realized it was a helicopter, and underneath it was, I guess, mounted to it was like this circular LED billboard of text, and it was advertising frozen pizzas. and then I really did want him to take me away, because I wanted to disappear at that moment. And I've never seen anything like that, you know. And of course, at night, you know, you can't see the helicopter. You could just see this thing hanging down and the rotating lights spinning around and stuff. It looked like something weird, you know, and I never forgot that. But I also never forgot that feeling just at that moment where you thought, I'm seeing something right now. This isn't like a memory, like you go, oh, maybe I saw something. Like, in the moment, I am looking at something right now that I can't explain. It was such a strange feeling. And so, yeah, the kids gave me a hard time a little bit after that, but it was just such a strange event in my life.
You know, just to touch on what you're saying, you know, like I said, I mentioned before you came on, I thought I saw a UFO when I was a kid, and, you know, who knows now? But I thought I did. But the feeling, you know, I was a big fan of In Search Of and all those old shows that used to, and of course, Twilight Zone, stuff like that. But and so I was ready to go. I thought it could absolutely be a legitimate thing. And when you actually are confronted with something like that, like all of a sudden the thing that you think might be real, it's there. It's a feeling. At least I got a feeling that it's hard to explain, and I treasure that. I kind of feel bad for kids today because I'm not sure that they could be convinced that anything is real, because there's nothing. When I saw something jumping around in the sky, I thought to myself, holy smokes, that's got to be a UFO. There's nothing else that can do that. But nowadays, kids have seen all sorts of stuff. I took my kid to see, you know, real life, real size dinosaurs at the Civic Center down in Huntington, and they were huge, and they walked around. You could ride them, you know. And he saw 3D and virtual reality, so I think they think everything is a gimmick, you know. And I think maybe that's lost. It's a shame. It's tough to get stuff over on kids anyway. You know, the stuff like the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. And so when I was talking to my boy coming back about UFOs and stuff, and he's not buying them at all. And I'm not sure there's anything that's going to convince him. So I think we lost something there. It's funny that as everyone now walks around with a camera in their pocket, and you see more and more footage, you can't trust any of it. Is another aspect of it that's a bummer. You know, in the old days, it was less likely someone was going to Photoshop something in the 60s. I guess is what I'm saying. There's been the UFO phenomenon as a whole has changed substantially in the last 20 years, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, you know, first of all, so to go back on something, well, like when you said people wouldn't Photoshop something, you know, in the old days, like there are photographs that have turned out to be not real. The Rex Heflin is one of the cases that as a kid, I thought this guy was a city employee who was out checking train tracks in his truck, and then said he saw a UFO fly by and it hovered around, and he took 3 or 4 pictures, you know. And, you know, there was no Photoshop, there was nothing, so he had to have seen something. Well, over time, what the downfall was, what did him in was, nowadays what they could do is, you know, think about those posters that you stare at and you can make like a stereo picture.
Yeah.
They basically did the opposite of that. They took 2 of his photos, and because they were taken in sequence and they were slightly different angles, and so they could kind of create a 3-dimensional map of where this item was. And so, when they looked at it, they go, okay, this isn't a thing that was 100 foot wide and 100, or a mile away. This is something that was, a foot wide or smaller and closer to 3 to 5 feet away. And they could kind of triangulate things like that. The go-to that I always used to mention, the 1-2 go-to was Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. Before those 2 movies, I mean, you would see a movie like we all saw, like I saw King Kong when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, what a great movie. And there was this thing, but at no point did I think that was a real gorilla. I mean, it doesn't look like a real ape. It looks like a stop motion kind of thing. And it was. Same thing with all those, oh gosh, all that Jason and the Argonauts, the fighting skeletons, all that.
The Harryhausen stuff, yeah.
Oh man, I love Harryhausen.
Oh yeah, he's tremendous, yeah.
But when I went and saw Terminator 2, I was like, well, that's a real guy, and he just walked through metal and he turned into a liquid. I was like, what? I don't even know where reality ends and the special effects begin. And the same thing was with Jurassic Park, when the scene where the Jeep was flipped over and the T-Rex is trying to get at the kids. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, well, those kids are real. That dinosaur's not real. And I don't know about the truck. The truck's 50-50, But just having that moment where I thought, I don't think you could ever trust what you see again. And the really scary thing about it is, in the early 90s, it took Spielberg and $100 million. And now, it takes a 12-year-old and some app they have on their phone to create stuff. So, yeah, any footage. I mean, you could upload a video right now of, you interviewed Bigfoot in the woods, and I wouldn't believe it. I'd have to have more evidence than that.
We've got our first applicant to come on stage and speak with us tonight. Now, I will say this is our friend TSI Matt, who sent me ahead of time a paper he had done a while back on the Braxton County Monster, a very famous UFO case here in West Virginia. So let's bring him up on stage, and we're going to get into this a little bit. I don't know how familiar you are with it, Rob. Around these parts, it's quite a big story. Are you there, Matt?
I am.
Oh, well, welcome in, man. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to talk. I want to talk about the paper you sent me, which was you. Now, can you explain what this paper was and what got you to do the paper in the first place?
I've been trying to remember that. It was for an English class that I had, and trying to remember now what it was.
Was it like in college?
It was, yes.
I see.
They had me do. It was basically a sort of research thing, and can't remember now why I ended up choosing it, but I did.
Were you a someone that was interested in the Braxton County Monster, the green monster up there? Was that something that caught your attention?
At the time, yes. I think that was just one of the options, if I recall. And I was like, hey, that sounds neat. I'll check that out.
So, I want to talk about the very famous case up there. There's a county in West Virginia, and I will say, I like to talk about localized stuff a lot, but this is actually a story that sort of made the rounds all over, which was the story of the Flatwoods. The multiple names. When I was a kid, the story was called the Braxton County Monster. Now it's sort of they lean toward the Flatwoods Monster, and it's also been called the Green. If you go to Flatwoods, West Virginia, there's a big sign that says Flatwoods, West Virginia, home of the Green Monster. So, which the city put up probably in the early 70s or late 60s. So he goes by several different names, but the meat of the story is Flatwoods, West Virginia. It's sort of the geographic center of the state there in Braxton County, and it is at the time it was quite rural. and they had an encounter up there. Now you wrote the paper on it. You want to get into it a little bit, Matt?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, it occurred on September 12th, 1952. Apparently, there were lots of different things that happened that evening. There was an Air Force fighter jet that just up and disappeared. Apparently over the Gulf of Mexico. Let's see.
There was, I believe they were also sightings of like shooting stars, meteors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That went down. You know, you mentioned the Air Force. I went to a convention. This is a side story, real quick, but I went to a convention in Charleston, West Virginia. It was the Braxton County Monster convention or symposium, and amazingly, I went because a very famous, I guess, ufologist named Stan Friedman was there. If you've watched any shows on the History Channel or anything about UFOs, you've probably seen Stan Friedman. He made the rounds for years, and they mentioned all the stuff that happened that night, and then to fill time because they had so little at this symposium, the guy read the name of every airman that was killed in the 5 years that surrounded that event. So we sat there for like, I kid you not, it was like 25 minutes while he read all these airmen's names. I'll never forget it. It was
Andy Kaufman-like thing.
It was very, very odd. So anyway, Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. Well, one of the objects that they had spotted crashed in the Elk River just south of Gasaway. Then shortly after that, a second sighting was reported on a hill not far from a school playground in Flatwoods. There was a group of folks. You could read their names if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it was Eddie May, Freddie May, Neil Nunley, Gene Lemon, and Tommy Heyer, and Ronnie Shaver.
Yeah.
Were the ones that saw this firsthand. They were kids at the time. They were accompanied by Kathleen May, which was the mother of the two other Mays. Basically, they saw or rather, they had the air had like a metallic smell, burned their eyes and noses. Dog ran ahead of them, but then turned around and run back with its tail between its legs.
Well, I mean, if you saw what they saw,
yeah, exactly.
Because what they came upon was quite a scene. First, they saw a glow over the hill, and they came upon what they described as a creature that with a head like an inverted ace of spades, and like a spades symbol, with sort of like long, thin arms with claws on the end, and sort of a metallic cylindrical body, and it sort of hovered. I believe it was at a tree, if I'm not mistaken, when they saw it.
I believe so. Yes.
And of course they took off when they saw this thing, and it's an encounter. It's funny, if you go up there now, the property's not it's private property. You can't go up there anymore. There was a time they gave tours up there, but not too far from there, from the location where they saw the monster, is a place called the Spot, which is like a Dairy Queen type thing, which we've eaten there many times. And they've got all the food in it is named after famous UFO sightings and monsters and whatnot. It's pretty cool. But this caused quite a stir in this little town, because no one there expected something like that to happen. And I mean, this is the middle of nowhere.
Well, I mean, who would?
Now, the people that lived in most of the people you mentioned have passed on. There's a couple that's never talked, but a lot of them they have handwritten drawings that they made of the creature, and the form of this creature has been quite popular over the years, and has turned up in everything from comic books to video games. Apparently, it has something of a cult following in Japan. Now, I don't know if you wrote about this in your paper. Did you write about what people are attributing this thing to being?
No, I don't believe so.
Well, Flack, you know probably. This thing is they say that this thing was an owl.
Yeah, well, it's better than swamp gas.
Well,
Usually it's swamp gas.
I can't recall if it was either a great owl or a barn owl. It was that.
I've heard barn owl.
Have you? Yeah. Is that Boat? Are you in here?
Yeah, man. I've been here the whole time.
I didn't even know. Hey, good.
Yeah.
Well, good. Welcome in, Boat. And so, now they've of course talked to the eyewitnesses repeatedly about this, and no one there thought they saw an owl. But that's how it is. And this has been sort of the skeptical look at it always says owl. That's because there's not a whole lot of explanation. Now, it wasn't a tree, I suppose that could be it. There was a lot of activity that night, though. There was a lot of reported shooting stars and whatnot, and there was the plane issue. There was a lot of stuff going on. It's still quite a mystery, even all these years later. But I will say the town has embraced the monster, sort of like Point Pleasant did with Mothman, and now they have all sorts of crazy stuff around Flatwoods, including I think there's like 5 or 6 chairs, these giant chairs you could get in and take your picture that are all shaped like the Flatwoods monsters, done by different artists. There's a Flatwoods Monster Museum in town. It's actually the next town over from Flatwoods, because if you go to these little towns, they're so small, there's not that much in them. If you go to the Flatwoods Museum and look across the street, it looks like the Flatwoods Monster came to town and flattened a big chunk of the town, or like Godzilla. I mean, it's like it's like a bunch of hollowed out buildings. They're all mauled. So I mean, this is a tiny. You ever been up there, Boat?
To Flatwoods proper?
Yeah.
No, I only go to the outlet mall.
Yep.
The real Flatwoods.
there you go. So, how did you do on that?
I will say this. It seems like, from what I've read about the encounter, that the Flatwoods monster is somewhat benevolent, right? I mean, he didn't do anything to harm the people that saw it, right?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't really do much of anything. He just kind of stood there. He didn't do anything wrong, and then he never was seen again. So that's why when the town was famous for the Flatwoods monster, I always laugh at that, because really, the theory is that a UFO crashed right there, and that I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he was getting some. Maybe the UFO runs on sticks. Maybe he's gathered leaves. I don't know what he was doing to repair the UFO that was down in the field. But whatever it was, it must have worked. There have been reports that the area that the people mentioned as having the glowing whatever did have discoloration on the ground, after whatever the thing was that left. Of course, there's no way to know that now, but it's a fascinating little moment in history, in the most rural of places, and it always found it quite fascinating. And if the look of the guy is pretty creepy. I think he's one of your creepier aliens.
Yeah, he's also one of the few red aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got red skin.
He's pointy too. It's a strange looking dude.
I mean, when you think about your aliens and your cryptoids, most of the time they're going to be gray or brown. I can't think of another one.
What, like they're rendered on the C64?
Right, exactly. With a coat of purple slime thinly applied.
Oh my goodness! Now listen to you.
Boy.
Listen, I'm not gonna.
Maybe Boat will get abducted here.
Yeah, no kidding.
But isn't it? It's fun that as things, reports are made in the media, and reports are made in I guess, I don't know, is it police sketch drawings that do these drawings of UFOs and of aliens and stuff? But as that stuff gets published, all the other reports start to follow those same things. One of the things that I go back to is I remember reading this UFO report, and this guy had drawn a sighting of, and this was in the 1800s, of a UFO, and people said, hey, we saw this thing, and it came, we think it came from another planet or whatever, and the picture was like of a dude in a hot air balloon with a propeller. And I'm gonna tell you that didn't come from Mars. Like there was no guy with a propeller that made it here.
Maybe
from Mars,
there's a crackpot inventor planet out there somewhere. You know,
but you know what I mean? Like once in the 1940s, Kenneth Arnold, you know, and he used the term flying saucer, and all these other people start seeing flying saucers. Well, after a while, every report looks the same, you know, so it kind of follows reporting and technology. So I do like these kind of reports, you know. The Flatwood Monster looks so unique, you know, versus every single thing now. They all look like the grays, you know. I mean, they were green for a while. Now everything's gray. They had slit mouths and they had no mouths, you know. But it's just weird that they all look alike during that same era.
I agree with you. It is quite fascinating. You know, let's turn now. We've got another submission here from a listener, and this is Pajako, who sent us this over. If you guys will check this out, this is Pajako's account. He also included an artist rendering to go along with it, which I'll play in the window here. So here we go. This is from Pajako.
Hi folks, Paul here, or Pajako6502 if you like. I just want to dial in and tell my UFO story, which dates back to when I was kind of in my late to mid-teens, so sort of 30 years ago now. We were walking back from, I don't know, some adventure late at night, and just looking up into the sky it ran, because it was a clear starry night. We saw what was later described to me as a fireball, but it was basically like a blue disc that looked like the inside of one of those gobstoppers with the multiple rings. And it just shot up from behind the horizon, shot right up into the sky super, super quick, and then just disappeared. And that was it. Nothing happened, nothing freaky, never saw anything like it again. And yet, you know, it stuck with me for all these years. And as I said, someone said, oh, it was a fireball. I mean, I guess it was a UFO, because I don't know what it is, and it's unidentified. And so, given that I've never been able to find any information on it, I was just wondering if anyone else has ever seen anything like it. Really like the show. Hope to hear some more stuff, and maybe I can dial in future with some other crazy stories that we got. But keep up the great work.
There you go. Interesting. Any thoughts?
I think if you're going to have a UFO sighting, that is those are the ones that seem the most plausible to me. Not, you know, he came down and stuck an apparatus in my backside. No, you see something, it's weird, it takes off, boom, UFO sighting.
I agree with you. I think unfortunately, the less details, probably the more plausible.
Right.
You know, to be fair, let's assume someone was probed by an alien, okay? Anally probed, okay? You know, if that happens to you, you really do need to tell somebody. And if you don't find that story realistic enough, too bad for you. Because an alien probed a guy. That needs to be out there.
Don't tell me.
Well, I'm just saying. Wouldn't you want to know? Listen, if you were probed, Bo, would you tell anybody?
No.
What?
I've been probed plenty of times. I don't go around spreading it.
By aliens?
Listen, I had a lot to drink.
Listen, give me a break, Bo. You dipstick. We got another one here I want to read. This is from our good friend Chris Folds, or Chris Folds, if you will. He has written me a message. I'm going to read this in its entirety. Chris writes, long-time listener, first-time caller, I have a yarn to tell. So when I was about 10 years old, I was leaving a swimming club and hanging around outside like you could do back then. In the sky, there were 3 objects with flashing red lights. Living near an airport, we were used to seeing planes and helicopters, but these things didn't seem to be moving. They then started rotating in position in a circular motion, like they were almost attached, and then suddenly, in the blink of an eye, they zoomed up and disappeared. I've always been convinced it was either some sort of weird military tech or a UFO. The second story I have was about 25 years later, when living in Finland area of the UK. That's F-E-N, Finland area of the UK. I was driving home in the dark, and there was this one farmer's field fully lit up from above in the distance. And in the distance was a cone of light to an unknown point. super bright light stadium lighting. I started to slow down the car to try and take a photo on my then trusty Motorola Razr, but like a light switch, it suddenly all turned off. I passed the area the next day. There was no lighting in the field, just a normal farmer's field. What do you make of that, fellas?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are in the sky that we don't know what they are. Not necessarily alien, maybe not necessarily alien, but it's hard to tell without proof. And unfortunately, part of what happens for people that, when you start getting into, if you're interested in UFOs at all, you quickly flip from one side to the other. One side says, I need definite proof. I need a dead alien. I need to catch the alien that's probing boat in the act. Like I got to see it right there. I got to see a crash UFO. And then the other side says, well, if we saw something we can't explain, could be a UFO. Well, I suppose it could be. But these are the things that I suppose that are most not just interesting, but also frustrating from the point of view for people that want to know more, want to try to find the truth, is that, I don't doubt Chris Fold saw something that zipped off or whatever, or, but, was it a drone? Was it a cloud? Was it lightning? Was it, we just don't know, and there's no way to go back and actually look at that event.
Those, you see, occasionally you'll see footage of these groups of UFOs, or maybe it's just one, that'll be lingering around, and suddenly they shoot off in a direction. It's always interesting to me because, of course, you always hear the old shtick: no earthbound craft could shoot off at that amazing speed, and that's the kind of stuff that keeps me in the game. Stuff like that. The truth of the matter is, it's easy these days to kind of give up on. I was into Bigfoot and cryptids quite a bit back when I was younger, but, I've gotten older, and there's still no Bigfoot, and there's still no Loch Ness Monster. They cleaned out the lock, It's tough to hold on to that belief, and I don't feel like I have to hold on to it, but it was something that interested me as a kid. UFOs have always been, of the things that I was interested in, between this, the paranormal, and ghosts and whatnot, UFOs, I've always thought, by far, to be the most plausible. And those events, there are certain events that still keep my faith alive. Do you guys find yourselves in similar straits? Have you always been believers or never? Like, where do you fall in that?
I'm the same way. I feel like out of all of the things, paranormal, cryptid, is it cryptid? It's not cryptoid. CRYPTYD. Is that the proper spelling?
Listen to your heart, Bode. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I always call them cryptoids. Sounds like the Noid. Anyway, I think that UFOs are the one that I like to think about the most, and the one that I hope is the most real. Because, UFOs, it's like, because it works on so many different levels. One, you're dealing with, like, awesome Star Trek-like technology, which would be awesome if it was real. Two, dealing with a different species of thing that we've never seen before, and who knows what, like Flack was talking about, is it the regular mouth? Is it the toothed mouth? Is it the slit mouth? Like, you don't know. These guys are from a different planet. They've got a whole different way of operating. So, like, it's an endless thing to think about and ponder and sort of, daydream about. Versus, like, I don't want the paranormal stuff to be true because I don't want some ghost creeping up on me, But, like, if a UFO is out there, that's cool. I can live with it, and I kind of dig it.
As a kid, you mentioned In Search Of. I loved In Search Of. I loved all those types of shows. We all watched UFO specials when we were kids. Problem with all these mysteries is that technology caught up with them. So when I was a kid, it was a fun thing to think about Bigfoot living in the woods. And of course, there's not one Bigfoot. There are many Bigfoot, and they are not just in California. They're reported in Washington State, and Oklahoma is a big Bigfoot sighting area, and all these different places. But, as a kid in the 70s, I didn't have any way to prove whether there was Bigfoot or disprove Bigfoot.
Yes.
But Now I got Google Maps. Now I got satellites. I could go click and go look through the woods and stuff and see that there's no Bigfoot bodies laying out there. And, same thing with Loch Ness. Like, if you wanted to study Loch Ness, I mean, I think you took a lawn chair and you went out there and you sat on the side of Loch Ness waiting for Nessie to pop up. I mean, the most they did, they had that weird footage where they had stuck a camera on the end of a pole and stuck it down in Loch Ness and drove around.
And it was all muddy and you couldn't see jack squat down there.
Right. But now, I mean, we have stuff that can plot all that, And so that's the problem for me for a lot of these things. And that is the one thing that does give me a little bit of hope about UFOs, because if there is something behind it, if they do have this technology to, I mean, obviously they're not, again, they're not in a hot air balloon with a propeller. They have some way to travel faster than we understand, than our understanding of physics. So if they're able to do that, then there must be able to avoid our detection. Maybe they don't show up on radar. Maybe they don't, crash into. They don't run out of gas. You know what I mean? So I just think if we are talking about an advanced type of technology, then that's the one that does seem the most realistic.
I'm going to agree with you. Hey, we've got someone ready to come in and speak with us. I'm going to get him in here real quick. As I'm getting him in here, I want to ask you, Flack, because you sort of touched on it there. So I'm guessing you've always been since childhood someone that believed in this sort of thing, and you are still. What you're saying is you're still fairly a strong believer of it.
Well, I was definitely a believer in all of it when I was a kid. I think I mentioned on one of the shows that when I would walk into the library, the librarian would just point me to that 001 area of the Dewey Decimal System where all those books were. I mean, that was my first stop. So I was always interested in it. And when I was a kid, I believed in all of it. And then over time, like nothing ever happened. Like nothing happened where I said, like definitive where I stopped believing in stuff. But it's just we kind of quit finding new evidence, like we have more technology, but we're not finding out more things, right? And so that's kind of the part that takes away a little bit from my hopefulness that some of these things do exist, but I haven't given up on any of it. I always hope that I mean, there was the old story, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, time flies, when those guys pulled the what was that, the coelacanth? Wasn't that the ancient fish that nobody had seen? They thought it was extinct for 100 million years, and a couple dudes that were out fishing pulled one out, and they're like, what do you know? So, I mean, weird stuff happens, and so maybe
snow leopards or all that sort of crazy stuff. So, that's the kind of stuff. There's just enough to keep you going. That's sort of the way I always looked at it.
All I'm saying is that I'm not expecting to see the Flatbush monster when I go to Boat Fest, but I may sleep with one eye open.
Flatwoods monster. This ain't New York. We've got another caller in here. Some people call him the Chud, but he's also known as the Frazzled One. What's up, Fraz? What's going on tonight?
Just wanted to jump in here for a second. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound fine, dude.
You sound great, man.
Okay, appreciate it. Basically, at this point, I mean, I'm not dismissing the fact that aliens do exist, other races do exist, and so forth. But the one big question is, where are they? And also, if they are out there, why would they want to make contact with us? Because it's not like we're actually reaching out. I mean, if we find a signal from SETI or something, we're not like sending out something that says, hey guys, come and visit.
What do you think the answer is, Fraz? Like, why do you think aliens would want to come to Earth?
Well, you've got to think, if they're more advanced technologically, first off, they may not have anything to gain from us. I mean, unless it's a matter of resources, food, whatever. I mean, something to that effect. But we may not have anything to offer, and who's to say what the alien mindset is? They might not be curious, they might not be explorers like we are, so they just honestly don't care.
I'd like to think that the aliens are so casual and advanced that the UFOs we see are like aliens taking their chick out on a date, and they're like, hey, let's go screw with the idiots, and they're just like drive by. That would be, I could live with that. But on the flip side, it could be scientific discovery. What do you think, Fraz? I mean, are you a believer? Do you think these are man-made items we see? Is it all a hoax? What do you think?
Honestly, at this point, I mean, I remain open, but I can't speculate as to what's out there without having some experience with it. I mean, I have no doubt that there's other stuff going on, but for all we know, we could just be one big experiment sitting in some laboratory somewhere, and they're just seeing how the experiment goes.
What do you think about it?
Seeing how we develop.
What do you think about it, Flack? Why would they come?
First of all, I think the experiment's going pretty bad.
Oh yeah,
burial, human race burial.
Yeah. I mean, there's all these different things. Like, why would they come? Well, in the movies, they usually show up for resources, right? Like, if they show up for water, or they show up, to they're plotting out, their civilization's dying or their planet's dying, so they're checking out other places to go. Again, I think that probably makes more sense why they would go to unpopulated areas. I think if a UFO was looking for a place to, start their own or restart their civilization and drop by Times Square, I think they might just keep going. I don't think they might not want to restart there. But, I don't know. It could be resources. It could be a lot of, the theories were that they're keeping an eye on us. This was especially when we had all these UFO sightings that were around during the time of the arms race and things like that they were keeping an eye and make sure that we weren't about to do something that was going to hurt other parts of the galaxy, So I don't know, but it doesn't, for whatever reason, if it is intelligent life that's coming out here to see us, it makes me, my question would be, why haven't they knocked on anyone's front door? Like, why don't they, present themselves? They may have a reason for that. I mean, if they saw Independence Day, they would have a good reason, but, it just seems like, why do they come, but they don't want to communicate with us?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think, I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility that something like the Prime Directive doesn't exist, for those spacefaring peoples. I think that's, I can believe that, say for example, if we ever got the ability to travel to other planets and stuff, we might even call it the Prime Directive. I mean, we steal everything else from Star Trek, but I can believe like that may be a reason why we haven't heard from them yet.
Well, another thought is, okay, think about this. Like, people go and they study wildlife on different continents and stuff, like gorillas, for example. Like, there might be somebody that's interested in their social development and what they can do and their habits and all this. So maybe one or two scientists will go and live with them for a while. Okay, that's limited contact. It's not like it's not like everybody that's romping around on the planet. I mean, there's tons of people, but they don't get regular visitors saying, "Hey, how's it going?" They wouldn't understand it. They wouldn't even be able to fathom what's going on.
Yeah, I had a theory a few years ago. I mean, I'm sure it's not original, but once we started seeing all this stuff with drones here that we're drawing. I mean, I have a drone. I played with it. Obviously, we've seen that we're sending unmanned missions, to the moon and to Mars and things like that. And so maybe the UFOs that we've seen, there's nobody in them. Maybe it's some sort of, a big version of a drone that's been sent out to explore the galaxy.
That's an interesting thought. It never had occurred to me that they would be unmanned. But yeah, it's a valid point.
What made me think about that was, there's all these sightings, and I think you referenced one earlier where people say, oh, well, the G-forces of the turns and the angles and things would smush a person if they were inside there. Well, maybe there's nobody inside it.
I will say, it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because it sort of fits in nicely with what I wanted to talk about here. And this is another sort of a local legend. We're very fortunate right here. We happen to be around some of this stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about what's known as the Hopkinsville encounter, or the Little Green Man encounter if you live nearby. This was a case in Kentucky near an area called Hopkinsville in 1955. Allegedly, a group, a family that lived on a very small rural farm were there and were accosted by aliens. I believe they said they were 12 to 15 figures. These things were all over the house. They were rolling around. They were dark figures that came out. And the farmers here, of course, these are corn-fed Kentucky boys. So what do you do when the aliens come around? They went out with their guns. They were having a shootout with these guys. And they were shooting, trying to shoot the little green men. Eventually they held them off and made it back to town. But this was a legendary sighting. Are you familiar with this one? Anybody in the chat?
Yeah, I remember reading about that one.
Really?
It's one of the few alien encounters that includes a shootout in such a way that could only happen here in Appalachia.
This really did. This scared the crap out of me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I was a kid, I read this in a book, and it scared the heck out of me. I was frightened that aliens were going to come in my window because if you listen to the blow-by-blows, these hicks are sitting in their cabin, and all of a sudden they look over and there's an alien face in the window. The aliens are walking on the roof, and they're shooting these guys, and they're not killing the aliens. The aliens are bouncing around like super balls. They're tough. They're tough to take down, these aliens. And it really did frighten me. Of all the UFO cases, this one scared me the most.
So I definitely, and it'd be interesting if to find out if some of us read some of the same books as children, because I definitely remember I have a book that has this, retelling of this story. I remember what creeped me out about it was when it said that they would shoot at them because they were in the trees, and they shot at them and they wouldn't fall. They just kind of floated to the ground, and then they would float back up. And yeah, it's just a terrible image, not just being trapped in your home, but trapped in your home by something that you can't defend yourself from. Now, I have to tell this story real quick, and I think I told it to you before, but we haven't talked about it on the air. But I recently took a cruise. I threaded the needle. We got in right when COVID cases had dropped, and by the time we got back, cases were climbing. So I think we timed it there was about a 2-week window where it was a good idea, and it's probably not a good idea again at this point. But when you go on a cruise and you go to the dining room, they will sit you with another family or group. They have these big round tables, and so we were seated with this family of 4, a nice family, and we were talking about where each other was from. They said they were from Kentucky, and so we were talking about the tornadoes, which was our first thing in common. And then he said they were from Hopkinsville. And the minute he said that, I started running through my brain like some sort of Rolodex. I was like, Hopkinsville, I know that name. And I was trying to think, do I know somebody maybe from the Discord that's from Hopkinsville? I was trying to place it. And then when my wife was talking to his wife about recipes, I blurted out, the UFO incident. And of course they stared at me like I was an insane person. And then he said, yes, that was, the incident. And so we talked about it briefly, but he did say there's a Little Green Men museum there. And so I am honestly thinking about trying to plan my route to Boat Fest where I could stop by and go see this museum. This story impacted me, like you said, so much as a kid reading about it. And so I'm really thinking about going to this museum on the way up there.
Every August, they have the Little Green Men festival gathering. and they have it's almost sort of like the Mothman Festival, except for this particular sighting. Now I've seen footage of this, and it looks several factors down from the Mothman in terms of the size, but it'd still be neat. And I've never been there. The problem is because I work in Kentucky, so people are like, man, I can't believe you haven't been to this. Hopkinsville is hundreds and hundreds of miles from where it's on the complete other side of Kentucky, and it is a long drive. And we've almost went a few times, but it's definitely on my radar now. I didn't know they had a museum out there, but that'd be kind of neat. I would like to see. It'd be neat to visit the place where these guys came, because one of the interesting things about this particular sighting was, so here they are, they're out in the house, the aliens come, they fight them off, they go tell people, they come back to the house, and then the aliens came back to accost them some more, and finally these people left. I mean, that's hardcore, when it comes to that sighting. I mean, this is one of the most hands-on sightings there are. Now, I mean, could a group of hillbillies get a bunch of corn alcohol out there and then get so liquored up they think they see that? Yeah, that sounds like something that you might think if you're living on the coast. But I mean, a lot of people that live out in these farms and stuff, these are real hardworking people who probably didn't want the unwanted attention that they got after they revealed the story. So it's one of those things that makes you wonder if a bunch of people just got together one night over a fire and dreamt something up, or they actually saw something. But all I know is that's one of the cases that really brought me down the line when it comes to UFO stuff.
You said the festival is in August, so that seals the deal. I'm coming to Boat Fest in June. I'm going to sleep on your couch for 2 months, and then on the way home, we'll be hitting the festival.
There you go.
I'll live stream the whole thing for you.
Let me ask you, Flack, and I'll ask the whole panel this we've got in here. Is there a particular case that tickles your fancy that you could think of that really got your interest back when you first heard about it? Travis Walton case, which was made into a movie that I think was called Fire in the Sky. That was the one. Oh man, that scared the crap out of me, that movie.
Henry Thomas, the kid from E.T., which, by the way, what a range. If you're going to star in 2 movies about aliens, and one is E.T., and the other one is about being violently taken into a UFO and probed and having a pretty bad day as far as abductions go. But the thing about that case that terrified me was 2 things, or maybe not terrified, but affected me, I will say, was 2 things. Number one, for those that don't know, I think there were 6 or 7 guys. They were on a part of a logging detail. They were out in the woods, and this UFO basically showed up and zapped one of the guys, Travis Walton, with a beam of light and took him, and he disappeared, and I forget how many days he was gone. A week? I mean,
it was like 6 days, right?
Yeah, he shows back up. But the 2 things that affected me were, number one, that all of the guys that were there took lie detector tests, and they all passed. Now, we all know lie detectors, I mean, not complete science, but the fact that everybody there said, this is what we saw, and they all passed it, always made an impact on me. And the other thing was that these guys not only didn't really gain anything by doing this, they all had stuff to lose. Like, they got made fun of, they lost, status in the community, whatever.
Didn't they think they murdered the guy for a while, as I recall? Yeah.
Yeah, the police were questioning him, and so yeah, it was one of those situations where it wasn't like they, went to the Inquirer trying to sell the story. They didn't want to talk about it, and they still didn't want to talk about it. So that, kind of going back to something that Boat said earlier, that's the kind of thing. It's not where people are like, well, I saw a little green man, and you go, okay, whatever. But the people that are like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I I don't want to get famous. I don't want my name out there. And those are the ones that keep me up at night.
Now, before we move on, Boat, Matt, I think you're still in it, and Fraz, are there any particular incidents that stick out to you that you've heard about in the past that you think are real sure shots in terms of UFO encounters?
for me, there was this book series, and it's still there because whenever I go to the Hurricane Branch Library beside the video vault, I still see it. It's this series of books, and oh man, I wish I could think of what the name is, but that was the first time looking through those that I saw burn marks on people, stuff like that.
Oh, geez.
And as a kid, I was like, man, that's not
that was a
something
big thing in the 70s, right? Like a triangle shape or dots or something.
Right,
that would appear
right.
on people.
And it's like, that's not something that you'd like, well, unless you're, and again, maybe this is it, but unless you're really messed up, branding yourself in various ways, like, doesn't seem like something that you do just to carry out your hoax.
Someone's really trying to get the story over, aren't they? When you're branding yourself, you're really going.
Right. For to what end?
Yeah.
So,
that is strange. I'm guessing you would never do that, Boat, to get over your UFO case.
I hate pain.
Something tells me if, someone said, "Listen, Boat, we'll give you this sack of rare coins or crypto if you go burn yourself," you'd be firing it up right there on the spot.
I'm branding myself right now.
Just the thought of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to tell people that you've been probed, but then when you got to go see a doctor and prove it, then I'm going to change my story. Maybe that didn't happen, Doc.
That the fire in the sky story you mentioned, which was it's funny. There are certain symbols. These are stories that we know. Some of us know because we grew up hearing them over and over, repeated on every show, back when there weren't that many shows, and read them in every book. And that I found amongst the most creepy. And the film, which I think I only saw it once. I don't think I ever saw it more than once. But that film, I don't know if this is, I don't know if they just dramatized it up. I found that film to be incredibly frightening and disturbing even. When I watched it, as a kid, it really jacked me up. And that's another one that got me. I want to talk another case here. And I know for people that are into this stuff, they're like, oh, these guys are really hitting the high points. But these are the ones that stuck out for me because I was a kid, and these are the ones you heard about. And we mentioned it earlier, which is the tale of Barney and Betty Hill. I love this story when I was a kid. This is another that was in all the books. Flack, I think, as I recall, that you mentioned this on your show. Have you heard of this one? Anybody in the panel? Have y'all heard about the Barney and Betty Hill?
It's the time shift, right?
It's missing time. It's exactly what it is.
Time. Right.
This was an event that happened way back in 1961. Barney and Betty Hill were a couple. They were driving. I think it was in rural. I believe it was New Hampshire. Does that sound right? And they were driving, and then they realized that they lost I think it was 60 minutes or an hour and a half. It was they had lost a certain amount of time. They didn't know what had happened to them, and they reported it, and they ended up having, they went under hypnosis, and of course, this under hypnosis, they revealed that they were kidnapped by aliens and brought aboard, and they were, manipulated or probed or whatnot in the ship. This was one of the cases. This is another one that scared the crap out of me, because the thought that you could be pulled up out of a car, a moving car. If they could do that, they could sure as heck come to a kid's bedroom, and whip him out of bed. You know what I'm saying? And take me up to the ship. And the thing is, you want the aliens to be cool. I mean, like you mentioned Star Wars and Star Trek's another one. I grew up, and the aliens you're like, oh, I like to meet these aliens. But when the aliens are taking you and doing horrible stuff to you, and then sticking you back down on the earth, that really shook me up. The whole horror of being abducted and then examined and tested and cajoled with, very disturbing to me. What did you guys think of that?
Well, I had two things.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bo. Please.
The Fire in the Sky, the movie you're talking about?
Yeah.
That movie came out in 1993, so you were 22.
No. There was a much older version of that film. This would have been in the 70s, both the one I saw.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, this was a TV movie.
That's right.
78.
That's it.
Okay.
The UFO incident, that the one?
It's called A Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the one.
I
didn't see the remake.
the UFO incident. There's a movie called The UFO Incident, which is the Betty and Barney Hill story. And one of the things in the story, they were an interracial couple. And so that was one of the things where people, chose at that time. I mean, it was a different time that they wouldn't believe them, which is terrible. But in the, and I think it's actually a TV movie, and I bet you money it's probably on YouTube somewhere. But Barney Hill is played by James Earl Jones, and Betty. Oh, he's great. And Betty Hill is Estelle Parsons, who, if you don't know the name, you would definitely know her. She's probably, for our generation, probably most famous for being the mother on the Roseanne show. It's a great movie. And again, it's one of those things, you're talking about this. They didn't want the limelight. They just wanted to find out what was going on. And this was probably the case, not just me, but to a million kids across the country, that introduced me to the concept of what was it, like regression hypnosis, where they were going to hypnotize you and find out what had happened during this missing time.
Yeah.
And then it turned out it was pretty creepy. I wanted to mention one other thing. There was what was you remember the movie Paranormal Activity?
Yes, absolutely.
Which was it was okay movie.
It was okay.
Kind of
slow.
Goofy, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was a scene in that movie where, to determine whether or not ghosts are coming or not, the family puts down flour on the ground, on the outside of their bedroom door, and they wake up the next morning and there are footsteps in the flour. And I told my wife that's the scariest scene in that movie, because if a ghost is flying around, who cares? It's a ghost. They're not going to touch you or hurt you. I mean, what are you going to get, a cool spot, whatever. But now, if they can interact with this world, if they can leave footprints, you're in trouble. And that if they can leave footprints, that means they can choke you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the same thing with this case. We're all talking about UFOs. We're all talking about looking at things in the sky and seeing flashing lights and things go off. And that's all well and good. But the minute that they can kill your car and they can zap you up into space, I'm out.
It's very disturbing, especially for a child. It took me a long time to get over that, but I was sort of, at the same time, I was sickly fascinated with it. I remember, and this is ludicrous, but I mean, they let you do this in school back in the day. I was the only kid in school that ever did a social studies project. A lot of kids did science projects, but they always wanted at least one kid to do one. And so I had done one the year before, and they said, listen, do another one. You can do whatever you want. So I did mine on UFOs, believe it or not, social studies project. And I tried to recreate a car with a big UFO over it to kind of recreate the Betty and Barney Hill, what could have happened, And of course, I'm a kid, and so the UFO was made of 2 paper plates that I colored blue, and then I took toothpicks and glued around, okay? The problem is these were load-bearing toothpicks, okay? So to hang all this up, those poster boards you used to buy at like the drugstore? I guess you still can. You bend them so they're like a try. They fold like 2 times, so they sort of yeah. I did that, and I hand drew like a forest and a background, and I put UFO Encounter. Just hand drew all this stuff, and I used a clothes hanger. I wrapped over the top of it to hold the UFO up in the air to look like it was hovering. And I thought to myself, this is a surefire winner. And since no one from my school did anything else, I automatically won. And I got to go to the county, which was a big deal in Eleanor. And I remember I put my UFO thing up there and looked around at all the other kids' things. And their cases were all made of wood. They actually had they did something that involved social studies. They had I just wrote some stuff about how cool UFOs were and just sat it in front of the poster board. And I remember how embarrassed I was when I went to look at everyone else's project, and I came back, and my whole project had tipped over, and the UFO had unfortunately fell apart with the weight of the clothes hanger on it. That was my last trip to the social studies fair. But that was my
obsession. It's funny that you mentioned that, because the social studies fair is actually next Tuesday at Winfield Middle School. So I'll relay your story to my students. They'll
Please
find
don't
out.
embarrass me, but put me over. Tell them I won.
I will.
Maybe Aaron could redeem himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to enter the Winfield Middle School Service?
Clearly, you've not seen my most recent products when it comes to building things. Not so good. So I don't think it would happen.
Now, let me tell you, Aaron, I have a not quite the same story, but I'll tell you something else that made an impression on me. You've probably seen it. It was the Brady Bunch episode. I just looked it up. It aired in 1974, called Out of This World. And it is about Peter and Bobby who think they have seen a UFO. And so it turns out on the show that Greg is playing a prank on his two younger brothers. And what he has done is taken a flashlight and cut out like a stencil that goes over the flashlight, and he hung a sheet so he could shine the flashlight from the upper window and it would make the outline of a UFO. And then he also had one of those kind of a slide whistle where you go like that, which I guess is the sound a UFO makes or something. And Peter and Bobby were totally fooled. Now, unfortunately, what happens is that when they do it again, Peter and Bobby bring a camera and they take pictures, and then eventually, the government show up because of these pictures, and Greg has to admit that he was pulling a prank. So after seeing this episode, I decided I was going to do the same thing. And so just like what you said, I got a blue blanket and hung it in my room. I tried to do that stencil kind of thing, but that doesn't work.
No.
And I mean, basically, it looks like a guy shining a flashlight at a blanket, but we had a video camera. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to set up this video camera. And then, when my friends come over, they're going to think that I got footage of a UFO. And the first kid that came over goes, why are you shining a flashlight at a blanket? And I thought, well, this is not, which was, by the way, superseded only by the time that I tried to convince a kid that I had a baseball signed by Michael Jackson. Why Michael Jackson would be signing baseballs, I have no idea. just random,
A real P.T. Barnum you are.
I never made a cent. Never made a cent on any of my things. But yeah, it was that same thing where I was so inspired. Like I wanted to recreate that, but I think the people that were doing UFO pictures or videos at that time must have had a little bit more skill than you and I had.
Well, I mean, of course, you see some people that just would take a penny and tape it to the glass inside their car and shoot a video of that. You could get away with that back in the 70s. Today that stuff doesn't fly, and they've debunked a ton of these. I don't know if you ever watched these old footage. I've seen videos from back. It's got to be in the 50s, I guess, right after the original flying saucer gimmick came out, and they would interview these normal looking people, but it would be like, oh yes, I've been to Mars, I've been to the planet Centaur 4, and they were out of their minds at telling these ludicrous stories. And I thought to myself, this proves to me that at least, 40% of the world will just lie right to your face without thinking twice, because these were idiotic claims. But it always amused me that I guess they just got caught up in the hype or wanted the attention. Who knows? Back in those days, maybe they just wanted to see a camera. You never know. But these days, I want to switch real quick here before we take this thing to the house. Here we are in the year of our Lord, 2022. And like I mentioned earlier, we're all carrying super duper high gloss cameras that can take pictures of everything. And a few years ago, UFO reports were on the rise. And, of course, given the parameters we talked about with modern UFO sightings, there's always a question about them. But when you get these massive sightings like the Phoenix Lights, like the stuff that happened in California, in Texas, do you guys think that there's going to be a point anytime in the near future that we are finally contacted by these guys, or someone admits that we've been contacted? Has that ship sailed? Does anyone care anymore?
Oh yeah, I think people totally care. I mean, look at what happened. There was a huge 60 Minutes expose last year about, Air Force pilots that saw stuff that they couldn't see, and all this stuff was declassified. I mean, I think we're entering into another golden era of UFO stuff. Even though we've all got great cameras, I mean, I think that the fact that more and more high profile people are taking footage, from way up in the sky out of these fighter jets, and they're saying, we honestly can't explain this, and the government's coming out and saying, we honestly can't explain this. I think that, within the next 5 years, we're going to discover something. I really do.
What do you think, Flack?
I hope so. And I agree with Boat. I think we're never going to find out what's going on by somebody's cell phone video. It's just not going to happen. Somebody filmed something out their window, some lights went by. There's just not enough information in that for us to research. But the incident the Boat talked about, where actual military pilots are saying these things are showing up and we don't know what they are. Airline pilots spend more time in the air than anybody, and they have they've reported UFOs, and there was a time where those things got pushed under the carpet. People didn't want to talk about it, but now that we're seeing a little bit more open conversation going on, maybe this is the point where we find something out. I hope so.
Chad, what's on your mind? You wanted to chime in.
Well, this is actually from a few minutes ago, but basically like playing pranks on people.
No,
I thought of something a long time ago, because for a couple months I stayed with family, and my cousin was about the same age, and I started saying all this crap, and I was freaking him out, basically telling him I was from another planet and all this stuff.
I'd buy it.
He would you hush? He didn't know what to think, but I had him really freaking out and scared, and I was laughing every time he left the room. But it was and I remember what I called the planet. You're going to get a laugh out of this.
Yeah.
Butchie. I don't know where I dug that up, but it just popped in my head at the time, and I had a ton of fun with him with that, because I had him convinced that I was like from someplace else.
I lived with Frazzled for a while. I'm convinced he's from somewhere else too, and I'm also convinced that it's at least partially Bigfoot genetically. But that's a story for another day.
Anyway,
go ahead, buddy.
Well, I was going to say one other thing too. Here's another thing. Like, basically people are like, oh, we'd love to see aliens. We'd love to have them come knocking on our door. Okay, here's something else. If somebody saw an alien, like if it walked up to their door, what's the first thing that's going to happen? The government's going to come in. They're going to scoop them up. They're going to take them off and do God knows what with them or to them. Could that not potentially, if there were alien races that had contacted us in the past, could they basically feel like we're a bunch of savages, and it's like they're not worth messing with? They're insane. They're not peaceful.
It's possible, man. It's possible, but I would wager that if you listen to a guy like Michio Kaku, the very famous futurist, he claims that if aliens were to visit us, they would be so far ahead of us, I mean exponentially ahead of us, that it would be like, walking up and trying to have a conversation with an ant, or maybe, if we're lucky, a mouse. We would be far beneath their gaze. He also contends that if they were to gaze upon us with some sort of intent, that it would not work out well for us. It would be the equivalent of stomping on an anthill, and we'd be the ants, unfortunately. So maybe if these aliens were to come around, it would not end well for us. But I don't think they're. That's the thing. If a guy like Michio Kaku, an educated guy, is correct I don't see UFOs running out of gas or crash landing or them having the need to probe us, any of that stuff, because we would probably get smushed if that were the case.
Well, here's something else too. I mean, this is something that nobody seems to realize as well. We have wireless signals. We broadcast everything. I mean, everything's out in the air, all the sounds, everything. So if you happen to be just a casual, like, casual, cool, friendly alien driving by, and you picked up some of our transmissions about some of the stuff that's going on, would you want to stop?
It depends on what we're showing, you know. I mean,
the thing is, these days it's all war stuff, it's all COVID stuff, it's all people being upset over this or that. I mean, it's just all the stuff that's going on. I mean,
what future or past content do you think that, let's say, the United States provided from an entertainment perspective that you think might appeal to an alien? Is there a particular show do you think that they might really enjoy?
I don't know, because, see, I can't speak from an alien standpoint, because what they would consider humorous may be completely different. I mean, we're talking a different mindset, too.
I'm going to go with My Three Sons. I think that would be the...
It's universally funny.
Well, it's funny,
literally.
But it's also ironic if you come from a place that has three sons. You see, get it?
Yeah, yeah. I like it.
Yeah. So,
I'd
say Benny Hill might be a winner.
Benny Hill, also a good, distinct possibility. They might like the song Yakety Sax. That might be part of it.
Or maybe Three Stooges.
Good Lord.
Aaron,
go ahead,
say
Flack.
something real quick.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about those people, and I've seen them. Those people that will, look right in the camera and then give you this story where you go, "Yeah, that didn't happen."
Yeah.
Like I was whisked out of my window, and so on one side of the whole UFO experience, you have those people that are either crazy or they're lying, one or the other, right?
They're angling.
Yeah. But on the other side, one of the most famous Oklahoma UFO incidents happened in the early 1970s. It was right around the time where the Lubbock Lights, that was a big thing. And then there was a couple other UFO sightings, but there were a lot of sightings kind of in the central South U.S. And the person that reported and that, basically headed up all this stuff was Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter, put in the, did the report. And I think this is when he wasn't president yet. I think he was governor. I think it was when he was governor of Georgia. But so like I said, yeah, of course, on one side, you have people that, you probably shouldn't trust. But on the other side, you have someone who was the president of the United States.
Well, Reagan was also a very well-known believer in UFOs. Of course, he was also a believer in astrology, that sort of thing. So, but I mean, he was a believer, which makes one wonder, especially these days. We've allegedly had the non-disclosure of alien encounters or interactions with spacemen or whatnot. I have to think that in today's modern political climate, if any president could go into the White House and find this hidden information, he would spout it out just to get over with the voters. So that makes me wonder if we've ever had any actual contact from a government perspective. And furthermore, if aliens are as smart as I think they are, the last people I would contact is any world government. I would just, you'd be better off contacting like Kanye West or Beyonce or Tom Hanks, someone like that everyone loves. And then working your way down the chain there. I'm not sure I want to go talk to the governments of any big country. Matt, you've got something on your mind. Toss it out here.
All right. I was just remembering back in the probably early to mid 90s. I grew up out in the country. I was outside one evening. I can't say whether it was extraterrestrial or not, but looked over and there was this thing. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It was kind of almost not rectangular because it was rounded on the ends, but kind of long. It had what looked to be windows, just kind of going meandering across the sky. It'd stop occasionally and then move some more. I can't explain what it was.
You saw this and you're just now bringing it up? That's amazing.
Yeah, that should have been the headline.
Holy crap!
Oh, okay.
So this,
Fair enough.
How high in the sky was this thing?
Probably, I don't know, a few thousand feet. Not too high. At first I thought it might be a blimp or something, but I've seen blimps and stuff since, and it didn't look anything like that.
And how old were you when you saw this thing?
Probably early mid-teens.
Now let me ask you, and this is
Okay.
supplementary to the sighting. How did it make you feel? Like, when you saw that, what did you feel like? And for the next few days, what did your mind go through? What were you pondering?
Well, so I was like, huh, what's that?
Did anyone else see it?
Not that I know of. And beyond that, it was still.
Were you scared?
I didn't really. Not really. I was like, because it was just more like, what's that?
Did it make any noise at all? No,
not that I heard.
Yeah, it's funny how people react to stuff and the reason I asked that question about how you felt. I read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, and one of the driving forces in Lovecraft is what happens when a person is confronted with something that can't possibly exist or is very, very unlikely to exist, and what happens to their mind. And I often wondered about the concept of seeing something like that would literally blow your mind and make you question all of reality, but you really sort of shrugged it off.
Yeah, well, I'm of the sort, if there are, I wouldn't mind meeting them. Like, hey, take me with you.
Listen, the aliens have standards, Matt. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's another thing. Are you sure it wasn't like, say, for example, Superman just basically flying a bus over, like, so people could tour the landscape or something?
Like I said, the aliens have standards, so Chad's not going either. After saying that.
No kidding.
You goofball. Good Lord.
Actually, I wanted to toss up one other point.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of stuff going on around the internet here recently, that basically the fact that we haven't encountered anybody else, that's because everything that we do, see, say, react to, it's all a big simulation, and that's why there's nobody here with us.
So we're the Truman Show, is what you're saying?
Well, like
more like the Matrix.
No, it's something called the Fermi principle. Look it up, and basically there's a whole line of things that theories and stuff that they've got. Like, why haven't we found anybody yet? Why isn't there any? Why haven't there been any like solid concrete signs that there is somebody else out there?
I think, and that's the simulation thing is always interesting. It's a good rabbit hole to jump down if you can't sleep some night. There's lots to read. I think it's more easily explained. I think it's because if you look at, life on Earth as we know it, I mean, what are we going to go back? A few thousand years, couple thousand years? That's a blip. I mean, that is a tiny wink in the time of the universe. I think our sun, somebody could fact check me here, but I think our sun's over 4 billion years old. So, for us, the fact that we built a radar, 40 years ago and we're pointing it up to the sky, it's not a very long period of time based on relative to the age of everything else.
You never know. It's a good point there. Well, gentlemen, I think we will table it there for tonight. I want to thank everybody for popping around. We got a good crowd tonight in the chat room. We appreciate you guys coming out. I want to thank our panel here. Of course, we heard from our good buddy Frazzled One. Thanks for coming out tonight, Chudley. We heard from TSI Matt. You'll be able to catch these two jokers tomorrow night on the TeamSpeak Irregulars. That's the TeamSpeak Irregulars on Twitch. If you want to check them out, they'll be playing some crazy games. Of course, we've got my comrade, my co-conspirator, my partner in crime, John Bodekar Schaller. He co-hosts the Amigos with me, and he's always got his hands in several dozen pies. Anything we can look forward to in the future coming from you, Boatster?
Look forward to another full day of programming from Amigos TV.
Oh, man.
Coming soon.
Yeah, I knew I was forgetting something. And last but not least, my good pal, my good friend, the mysterious Rob Flack O'Hara. You can catch Flack on any number of shows that he's putting out these days. He hosts the Sprite Castle show about the C64. He also hosts the brilliant You Don't Know Flax, the long-running show that just tells you about Flack's life. It's a great show. He's also started a new show, Like a DOS, which is all about DOS gaming. And he's also brought back Cactus Flax, which is all about his arcade collecting. You're going to be a busy boy, Flack.
There's a lot going on. Plus, I got to schedule these abductions that keep happening.
Oh, man. Well, listen. Clearly, they need some writing done up there. they're coming to get you. So we'll take it to the house. Thanks everybody in the chat, and we're gonna try to come back again next month. We might run a poll to select next month's topic and see what people are interested in talking about. Again, thanks everybody for turning up, and we will catch you guys on the next episode of Conversations from the Dark Side. Until then, keep looking up.
You have just experienced Conversations from the Dark Side. Until next week, try to enjoy the daylight.